Attacks on foreign nationals. More than 60 people have been arrested so far. President Zuma also visited Umlazi, where he appealed for calm, and relief efforts for those affected by xenophobic attacks are still continuing. Meanwhile, Gauteng Premier David Makhura has urged residents to report any planned attacks on foreign nationals to the police. Let's look at other stories that are making headlines on other media platforms. SABC News Online is also leading with the following this hour. Thank you for watching Media Monitor and welcoming us into your homes. Now, Media Monitor is a platform where we discuss the news that made everybody talk, looking at stories from across all media platforms. Now, this morning, we aim to prick your brain and encourage you to look for the story behind the story. We also aim to deepen your understanding of the role of media in our democracy, while also creating more awareness among TV viewers, radio listeners, newspaper readers, as well as users of all social media. Now, to be part of our discussions today, call us on the following numbers. It's +2711 if you're outside the country, 714-6843, 714-6847, 714-6857, or interact with us on Twitter at SA Media Monitor. A very good morning to you. Welcome and good morning to our editor this morning, Mr. Akash Bramdio. He is the editor of the Sunday Tribune. Akash, thank you for coming to studio and joining us here on Media Monitor this morning.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Akash. Well, let's have a look at what is making news headlines across all newspapers this morning. The Sunday Times: kill thy neighbor. Alex attack brings home SA's shame. The Sunday Tribune: third force probe. The Sunday Independent: Pierre, Lamour and the drug lord. The City Press: a king under pressure. The Weekend Argus: Zuma makes a promise of peace. Let's have a look at other headlines across the African continent. Now, Nigeria's Sunday Trust: 300 Nigerians stranded in South African town. A very good morning to all of you. Now, Akash, let's get straight into it. Front page news: the City Press: a king under pressure. Now, this article speaks to how much pressure was actually mounting on the king to act to try and actually diffuse the situation by speaking directly to the public, which is why it's called an imbizo that is actually convening tomorrow. Akash, this story hits the front pages, but what took so long? We've been seeing this happening for the past 2 to 3 weeks now.
Look, I think it's very important that the king does call an imbizo on Monday, and you know, it is something that should have happened a lot sooner. But also, let's place this entire thing into context. You know, it's firstly debatable whether what the king said resulted in the violence, whether that alone was the catalyst for the violence that we are seeing. Because it's certainly, if we use the king as the excuse, it doesn't explain the violence that we've had previously in South Africa. And xenophobic violence is not an entirely new issue in South Africa. It's historic. And of course, there's a variety of different issues that one can argue has led to this particular situation where we've had the violence that we've had. So personally, I think it's a very simplistic solution to lay complete blame with the king. I think certainly what the king said needs to be analyzed, and we know that the Human Rights Commission is undertaking a process that's having a look at that. And of course, if he is guilty, if he did say something that he wasn't supposed to have said, there would be consequences. But the reality of the situation is that it's very simplistic, in my opinion, to lay complete blame at the king. What's important though right now is that there are efforts underway, both from a government level and including from the king, and a variety of other people, South African soccer players, artists, ordinary South Africans who are speaking out against the violence. And I find that particularly heartening, that South Africans have almost come together and taken a stand against xenophobia.
Akash, it's very interesting that today, if you look at the newspapers today, almost all of them, from page 1 to almost page 9, is actually a focus on xenophobia. Let's look at the Sunday Times front page there. It says, "Kill thy neighbor, Alex attack brings home SA's shame." Well, this is basically a brutal account of how a Mozambican man was, of course, circled by a mob in the township while people looked on helplessly. And of course, you know, others can't even help in those situations. While the man was stalked, stabbed and killed after he was pleading to his life to no avail. And the article recounts various other incidents that have actually sparked in and around Johannesburg. You can just see in the pictures, if you look at those graphic images, Akash, that the faces of sheer determination on the people's faces is actually yielding a knife at the guy there. What do you think about this story?
Look, this story is what we'd call a color piece. It's describing in very vivid detail what's happening to this particular individual,
and it's shocking.
Absolutely, let's make no bones about it. It is completely unacceptable. The fact that we have South Africans attacking foreigners by virtue of the fact that they are foreigners is absolutely unacceptable. What I do think is important, though, is what SABC Online is going with at the moment. The fact that the police have been successful in curbing the violence. And let's look at the last time that we had tensions, even based on this story, was on Friday night. You know, the incident that this story outlines happened on Friday night. We had a relatively peaceful Saturday. To the best of my knowledge, until I came into studio, there weren't really attacks in Johannesburg or in Durban or in Pietermaritzburg this morning. So this story is really a Friday story that's recounting the absolute horrendous situation whereby this particular foreign national was attacked. And again, I stress, it's absolutely unacceptable, but also let's take into account that our police force has done very well to stem the tide of violence. Let's be honest, it could be a whole lot worse, as we saw a couple of years ago. Akash,
let's move on there to the Sunday Independent. We're still going to cover xenophobia in the bulk of our show today. But the Sunday Independent took a different turn. It says the Pierre Lamour and the drug lord. Now, basically, Pierre is fighting allegations of trying to defeat the ends of justice after she allegedly actually alerted Mr. Lamour to a Hawks investigation pertaining into his involvement with criminal underworld syndicates. Apparently, Lamour's arrest could even spell further troubles for the already embattled South African Police Service. Akash, what do you make of this latest development now?
Look, this is what irritates me, okay? We're dealing with an outbreak of xenophobia. The focus of our police commissioner, the focus of our provincial police commissioners should be on policing, on stemming the tide of violence, on protecting people, on ensuring that their members, who are obviously facing lots of danger, have what they need to deal with the situation, are motivated. Instead, where's the attention? The attention is on a matter that, in my opinion, our police should not be involved in at all. Fraud and corruption is something that should be beyond the realm of our police services. So it's really unfortunate that at a time when we're dealing with xenophobia, when we're dealing with an outbreak of violence that has a huge impact internally on our image as well as externally on our image, that we've got to report on a matter like that. It's a sad reflection of the state of some people in the South African police services.
How is the police service going to recover from such a scandal, Akash? I mean, you just spoke about how the police were handling the situation with xenophobia.
Look, I think let's make a difference between some of the very capable men and women on the ground who have their hearts in the right place, because there's a vast majority of South African police who are committed, who are above corruption, who are doing it because they have the best interests of the Republic at heart. But I really do think that the police has a crisis in terms of their management. We know a couple of years ago, Jackie Salebi was found guilty in a court of law. And now we have almost a copycat case involving the provincial commissioner of the Western Cape. Admittedly, he's still charged. He's, a man is innocent until proven guilty.
Allegations.
Yes, it's allegations at this stage. But really, should it even be getting to a point where we have allegations of this nature? Absolutely not. Certainly not in a period where we're dealing with the type of violence that we're dealing. Really, the provincial police commissioner's focus should be on fighting xenophobia. Instead, what's the Minister of Policing really doing? He's looking at ways to determine whether the police commissioner, the National Police Commissioner, Pierre, should be in her job or not. That's obviously putting her under pressure, taking her focus away from where it should be.
Speaking of police taking their focus where it should be now, the Sunday Tribune, your newspaper is dealing with the third force probe, Akash. Well, apparently the state security believes that there is a third force behind the xenophobic attacks currently being carried out through KZN. Akash, tell us more about this article, please.
Look, there's police are investigating, obviously, why the xenophobic violence broke out. And some people would say very simplistically, it was a call that the king made. We know for a fact that we can't, it's too simplistic a solution to say that what the king said in Pongola a couple of weeks ago was the only reason that there was an outbreak of violence. It's too simplistic a reason. So the state security agencies are looking at the possible causes because we need to investigate what the causes are. We will never solve this problem if we don't find out what's at the root of it. Economic hardships of local people is one of the issues that's being investigated. Interference by possible foreign agents who want to destabilize South Africa is a potential issue that they're looking at. And also perhaps internal forces. What we do know is that the state security agency is confirming to us that they are looking at what's behind the start of xenophobic violence, and they're not ruling out the possibility that this could be orchestrated. We know in the past week there have people who've come up and said, but this thing is too well organized for it to have been random. It's too well for ordinary people to have just decided to have an uprising. It was orchestrated. Mary de Haas.
So is there an actual investigation to probe for the third party in this matter, Akash?
Yes, I think they're looking at what the various options are, and one of the options is that this was orchestrated. And if it was orchestrated, well, who orchestrated it? And what was the outcome? What was the intention?
We'll go deeper into the topic later on in the show. Let's have a look now at some of the tweets that our viewers have sent us to regarding some of the topics that we've been discussing today. Timen Shandu says, a king under pressure. I blame media for reporting lies and twisting the king's speech to suit their financial desire. Janet says, Zuma makes a promise of peace. Do any of Zuma's promises ever get fulfilled? Thank you so much to our viewers at home for those tweets that you've sent us on the topic. We're going to take a quick ad break. We'll be back shortly after this.
Tell players, so what do you call someone who does their bit to ensure the future's gonna be cool? Voter. Get it? No, dudes, not voter, kabouter. I'm talking voter. You know, like make an X. Ish, tough crowd.
Engulfed in crises. That's how the United Front sees South Africa.
This South Africa is not one of our dreams. It is not the country we deserve and demand. This South Africa is not meeting the needs of its young people.
Well, President Jacob Zuma said Eskom's woes are a challenge but not a crisis.
We have a plan to deal with the matter, and it's a good plan. When we can say we have a crisis, now we have a challenge and we've got a solution.
That's Business News, weekdays at 6 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. If you've just joined us, our editor this morning is Mr. Akash Bramdeo, the editor of Sunday Tribune. Look, there are also other interesting stories that didn't necessarily make the front pages. Let's have a look at them now. The City Press's page 4 says how Zille was pushed. Well, basically, Akash, I don't know if we should say we should have expected such a piece. I mean, this article alleges that Helen Zille's resignation as party leader was a tearful and forced one. This was done by the party's list of requirements of, so to speak, of what they expect the new leader to be, among them young and vibrant.
Yeah, I think the first thing, there was a clear indication a week before the announcement that Zille was gonna continue as party leader, and obviously within that week, as the article makes reference to, something happened that changed her mind. If the article is to be proved correct, what we can say is that race continues to be an issue in the Democratic Alliance. Because clearly the party did not want to have a top structure that was very white, and they understood the need to reach out to black South Africans, and Zille being at the top was not necessarily what they wanted. And I think there was a growing feeling within the party that they needed to be changed. But I think, we shouldn't be surprised about this. We've known for a long time that this is a historic issue within the DA. We also know that Zille may have in fact shot herself in the foot by opting to be part of the Western Cape government as premier, rather than her role in Parliament as the parliamentary leader. Because, Mmusi Maimane has been given a fantastic platform to push his particular profile and build his profile in Parliament. I mean, his speech on xenophobia was fantastic, where he said, let's deal with the issue that Malema wants to deal with, which is pay back the money, but we've got a far more important issue to deal with right now, which is xenophobia. I thought it was a really good speech. I thought it's something that all South Africans could associate with. What did we hear about Zille in terms of xenophobia? She criticized the king, and it was a very bland statement, but you don't have the theatrics that come with Parliament. And and there's a lot of people in the DA who've said this as well, it's a pity that Helen Zille chose to remain in government in the Western Cape as opposed to being in Parliament.
Akash, hold that thought quickly. Let's take Douglas on the line from Val. Douglas, a very good morning to you, sir. Please go ahead quickly with your comment.
Morning, Jolly. Listen, my friend, it's not the king to blame for the xenophobia. They mustn't blame him. It's been all the vandalizing and the strikes of the unions. The Communist Party is also sitting in this, and Julius Malema and his crowd. Because every time they go on strike, the unions go on strike, there's never just a strike, there's vandalization and there's damages. And people are seeing this. People are learning from the other people what they're getting away with. And actually Blade is supposed to be the education OT, but he started that whole thing with the road statue, that education character. They should fire him. Jacob Zuma should fire the communists out of his party. I'm telling you, that's where your problems are lying, is with what the youngsters are seeing, and they're not being taught the right way.
All right, thank you so much to Douglas from Vereniging there. He says people should stop hiding behind the king's statements, and really he is not to blame for this, and he did mention what he thinks could be some of the underlying issues. And I think it's grown quite a lot of emotion. It sparked a lot of emotion amongst a lot of South Africans, Akash. But how are the people in Durban reacting to this?
Look, I think there's I go back to what Thabo Mbeki said. There are almost two societies in South Africa. And, you could call them very loosely the haves and the have-nots. And the haves are talking about xenophobia on various platforms, social media, newspapers, radio, television, and they're all condemning it. But here's the thing with the haves is they're not competing for scarce resources like jobs with the foreigners. They're almost above that. So it's very easy for them to take a stand and say, well, you know, we should be protecting foreigners and we shouldn't be targeting foreigners. But there's also the other group that have they're competing for the scarce resources. And I think that's where our focus needs to be. You know, it's pointless us, for example, on social media coming out and talking against xenophobia. You know, it talks to people who have money because they have money to buy connections to get onto the internet, etc. The focus, and this is why the King's Mbizo tomorrow is so important, is because it talks to the people, and that's where the message needs to be. And no one is denying the fact that we do have issues that we need to resolve on the ground. It's how we resolve them, Lisha, that's important. Going out and attacking people is not the way to solve those issues.
All right.
And what we need to do as a society is to find more creative ways to deal with those issues. A very simple way would be if we were able to grow our economy at higher levels and create jobs where finding a job was not as difficult as it is today, some of these problems would cease to exist.
Let's go back to the inside stories there, Akesh.
Yes.
I mean, we can go on, and I'm encouraging all our viewers at home, do call in and comment on the xenophobia story. We're dedicating the whole show to the xenophobic attacks. Now, we're still talking about how Zille was pushed out of the party, but let's move on to My Money now has the upper hand. It's a story right next to that one. And you mentioned a very interesting fact there, Akesh, that race seems to be a very big issue that now the DA seems to want to transform or deal with at large. What do you make of My Money now having the upper hand? I mean, it says in this article that My Money is the next hopeful candidate for the National Party leader, with most, if not all, Western Cape members fully behind him.
Look, I think the point at which Lindiwe Mazibuko decided to call it quits and go over to America, it was very clear that from that point on, Musi Maimane was going to be the person who was going to succeed Zille. You know, he's got all the credentials. He would be the type of person that some of the conservatives within the DA would be able to embrace. He's also got the black face that the DA wants. You know, they want that. They've never had it, and they believe that merely putting a black face there would probably resolve a lot of their problems. Is he going to be the party leader? Well, it's too soon to say. It's really up to the DA caucus to make that decision. Is he the front runner? Absolutely. Is he likely to take the position? Absolutely. He's everything. He's been molded by the party. He was their face in Gauteng. He's their poster boy, their golden boy. I would find it very difficult for anybody to make it ahead of him.
Akesh, I mean, I guess the transition within DA has been quite a peaceful one so far, and it seems that everybody's on the same page. What do you make of Maimane's announcement to actually run for party leader?
You know, it's very interesting because Hillary Clinton has recently in the States made her decision to run. And I think a lot of the way the DA sometimes tends to operate is very much based on how the Democrats in the States tend to operate. And I mean, Musi Maimane was very strategic in the way he did his announcement. He let us know beforehand that on Saturday or Sunday he was going to be making the announcement. So there was a whole lot of talk about it on social media before. And then he had the 1,000-odd supporters in the Western Cape that were with him when the announcement was made, and everybody at the table, there to support him. It was carefully orchestrated. It wasn't something that just happened, and it makes you realize how there's a lot that happens behind the scenes in politics that we sometimes forget to analyze and take note of. But yeah, he had a fantastic platform. He had a great start to his campaign, and no doubt he's got the support as well. Certainly from the people that we've been talking to, he's by far the leading campaigner.
Do you think this is a DA strategy for the next elections, Akash?
Oh, well, absolutely. Look, we've got local government elections coming up, and the reality is that under Helen Zille, the DA has done well. Certainly since 2007 when she took over, the DA has gained. I mean, if I look at a province like KwaZulu-Natal, they're now the official opposition in KwaZulu-Natal, something that the DA has not done previously. We know that in Johannesburg, in certain metros, Nelson Mandela Metro, for example, in the Eastern Cape, the DA is going to give the ANC a very, very close battle. I mean, there's even the danger that the ANC could lose certain of the metros. So Helen Zille has done fantastically well to date, but I do think that it needed a new leader to take up the struggle from where she left it, to hopefully, from an opposition perspective, push the DA to a new level.
All right. Thank you, Akash. Let's take Eddie from Velcom on the line. Eddie, a very good morning to you, sir. Please go ahead with your comment. Eddie, good morning, sir. Are you still on the line?
Yes, how are you? How are you?
Very well, thank you, Eddie, sir. Please go ahead with your comment.
Yes, it's Eddie from Ondasres. No, I'm saying I just want to appreciate that the king will be addressing his constituency tomorrow, although too late, to be honest. And the other thing is that, we need to look at the root of all these things, and we must be honest when we discuss these issues. And, the thing of unemployment and poverty, these things I'm not justifying. I abhor what is happening in our country, especially when people are attacked and so on. But we need to look at these issues and be honest and discuss the issues that are facing our country as South Africans. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's Eddie calling us from Velcom. Well, stay tuned, because after the break, we're going to discuss, of course, the biggest news this week, the scourge of violent attacks on foreign nationals, which has now spread to certain areas in Johannesburg. We'll have the latest update from Durban as well. You don't want to miss it. This is Media Monitor on SABC News.
Issue of Evoke magazine at sabcevoke.co.za or download the app on iOS or Android and immerse yourself in our world.
Type 1 diabetes happens when your pancreas stops working, so the body does not get insulin anymore.
I have diabetes. My life is changed. I was in a total state.
Too much food, too little exercise. That's what it's about.
Hot flushes. So you would start with lifestyle modification, wearing cotton clothing, eating right, etc. And then hormone treatment for hot flushes.
Join me on Health Talk every Saturday morning between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. as we unpack current health stories.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. Now, South African neighboring countries have showcased acts of intolerance to the latest xenophobic attacks, with Zimbabweans earlier this week calling to boycott South African businesses and products. Nigerian youth took to a peaceful protest in Lagos, threatening to blockade South African companies in Nigeria. And SA workers in Mozambique have evacuated the country in fear of violent retaliations. Now, Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini will hold an Imbizo meeting on Monday with traditional leaders in a bid to stop the xenophobic attacks. Let's quickly look at this insert.
The impact of these attacks has far-reaching implications on our economic, social, and relations with the continent and the world. South African companies who are running successful businesses in the continent, who help to contribute to our revenue and sustaining our economy may suffer the same fate.
Now, live from our Durban studios, we welcome Ayanda Mhlongo, SABC News reporter, who will give us a clear understanding of what has been happening on the ground in Durban concerning the xenophobic attacks. And right here in our studios, we have Bongani Khumalo. He is the chairperson of the Forum for Institutions Supporting Democracy. A very good morning to you, Bongani.
Thank you.
Ayanda, a very good morning to you. Now, you've been at the helm of this story. What is the latest in Durban? Has the situation calmed down?
Alicia, very good morning to you. I must say that in the last 2 days, we have seen the situation calming down. Of course, you would know that after the peace march that we had this week, mayhem broke out in the city of Durban. But as you know, that the police have been here. There's been a strong contingent of police that have been deployed from around the country, various provinces, to come and assist the police of KwaZulu-Natal. So they have been able to bring the city rather to, it's still tense, but I must say stable in terms of the attacks and clashes. So the past 2 days, yes, we have seen a relative calm, although speaking to the foreign nationals in the Durban CBD. Now, you would I would rather put it like this, Alicia, after the attacks that we know started in the areas of Espingo and Chatsworth, a lot of foreigners then fled to the CBD because at that time there weren't any incidences or attacks that were being reported. It was still the safest place for them. So a lot of them then flocked, obviously staying with friends, with relatives in the Durban CBD. And then when the problems then started and the attackers then moving closer to the CBD, then there was problems there and challenges for them. And so they were basically saying that now they've really got nowhere else to go, that the city was their last place of refuge. And now with the attacks now starting in the Durban CBD, the next step was for them to go back home. Many of them say that they're still not certain that it is still safe for them to operate, to go back to run their businesses. For the past 3-4 days, their shops have been closed in the Durban CBD, and also, well, of course, outside of the city in areas that have had terrible and vicious attacks against foreign nationals, but also other areas as well where there haven't been attacks, but due to fear, many foreigners then just deciding to close their businesses. Others, of course, sadly, we do know that many of them have decided to go back home. The Malawans and those from Malawi, Mozambique and Zimbabwe, many of them have decided to go back home. And even as yesterday, we were with President Jacob Zuma in Chatsworth, there were about 40 buses at the Chatsworth shelter and of Malawans boarding those buses, as well as those from Mozambique heading back home. But yeah, coming back to the city, they're still saying that they do not feel safe, and therefore they are appealing to the police. And I must say the police have basically been manning every single corner of the Durban CBD. I don't think there's been a time that we've seen so many police officers in the city centre. A lot of police officers concentrated around the point area where there has been a lot of threats that the Nigerian community, which is a lot around that area, will be attacked. But so far, I must say that it has been relatively calm.
Some progressive news coming from our reporter in Durban. Ayanda, we'll catch up with you in just a moment. But Bongani, I just want to find out from you, we've just heard the report now, how does the current situation of South Africans attacking foreigners actually impact our country in terms of everything from the economy to relations to agreements, etc.?
Yes, I think maybe the first thing that one has to say is to indicate the concern and total shock that has gripped the constitutional bodies, which is the forum that I represent today. The results of what is actually happening now have got very far-reaching implications for the South African economy. It's got also very far-reaching implications in as far as the credibility of South Africa as a country and a leader in global political, socio-economic discourse has. And I think one must also commend the efforts that the country has actually taken in terms of trying to control and manage the damage that has actually been caused. And I think the story that Ayanda is telling now gives us a little bit of comfort. And I would say we should not actually be too comfortable. We're coming from a history. This is a second time that such kind of outbreak of violence against foreign nationals, which from where we sit as constitutional institutions, we also believe that these are violations not only of South Africa's constitution, but of all the charters, United Nations declarations around the safety and security of people. So we really think that this has got very far-reaching implications, and government has demonstrated some significant amount of resolve in dealing with this matter. And I think when we heard that the president had to cancel his trip overseas, which had been planned, it really shows how serious the government is taking this. But what is actually critical is that this should not be left to be looked at as if it's an issue just for the government. The central pillar around some of these happenings is the communities themselves that have to live with the people that we are talking about this morning.
Bongani, I wanted to ask you, I mean, democracy has come a long way. Don't such acts compromise our very democracy that our forebears fought so hard for?
Like I said, these acts compromise the very credibility of what we claim to stand for. South Africa has got a constitution which a lot of countries that are in transition have been drawing lessons from. South Africa, as a country, had a very smooth transition from the apartheid, dark eras of apartheid, to democracy in 1994. And when one thinks about the road that has been traveled, and then what is currently happening now, this is definitely a big dent, and it's reversing some of the gains that we have made. I think it's important also maybe to remind your viewers that back in 2008, when we had a first real serious outbreak of these attacks, the Human Rights Commission produced a report. That report had a number of recommendations, but most of those recommendations literally spoke to how we need to move in unison. The state, civil society, traditional leadership, and our justice system to actually move towards creating workable, resilient, and cohesive societies.
Let's have a look at what the viewers, you just spoke of viewers just now. Listen to our viewers at home. John S. Jackson says, first tell in plain language what democracy is and how many forms it can take, perhaps why democracies fail. And Tlantla Kwenda says, why xenophobia is not seen as a crime. Well, that's the question that is on everybody's lips, but you'll get to answer that in a moment. Ayanda, back to you now. We understand that President Jacob Zuma visited, of course, some of the affected areas yesterday, and the president did mention that they're not chasing the foreigners out. They're not saying that they must go, but rather they offering them assistance in terms of how to help them, whether they stay or they do go. Did things change after the arrival of the president? And also, what can we expect from this much anticipated imbizo by the king tomorrow?
Yes, well, the president stressing a very important point, and I must say that it actually started with the city of Durban to the province, and also our national ministers, from Minister Maloseko Gigaba, who has spent weeks here in Durban, stressing that point that they want no foreign nationals. They do not want to see them leave under the current conditions. They do not want to see foreigners leave South Africa because they have any fears, and they've been reiterating that fact that government is working around the clock to ensure that there's a stop, we stop this violence, and also that they're now putting in measures in place to ensure that at some point, for those foreigners who want to be reintegrated into the communities, that they are able to do so. And I must say, Alicia, the president arriving yesterday in Chatsworth, obviously he was welcomed. I'm very excited to see him. A lot of foreigners have been saying over the last couple of weeks that they wanted to to see President Jacob Zuma come out and make that call, which the president has in fact been making that call. But to see him yesterday, he did say that the country, working with the police, they were going to act against people who were perpetuating or involved in this crime. And adding to that, I mean, around close to 80 people have now been arrested in these violent clashes. The president saying that the country would assist those who wanted to leave to go back to their countries. They would facilitate those arrangements for them. But I think he mainly wanted to say that to him, he said he doesn't want to see them leave under these conditions, and that the government is working on a very important point, is that what caused these attacks, and find a solution to them. That, he said, is a priority for government now, and we have seen that through the provincial government, our MECs here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. They have been meeting with various organizations, various stakeholders, from business to communities, to try and get to the bottom of what actually started these attacks. Those meetings are continuing. Then, of course, very importantly, I think in this, and foreign nationals welcomed the news when we heard that King Goodwill Zwelithini had called an imbizo for Monday. That imbizo will be taking place. And I know as of yesterday and today, we were hearing reports that councillors Izinduna and Amakosi were going to the different areas, inviting locals, the king's subjects, to this imbizo, where the king will then address the people of KwaZulu-Natal. This has been welcomed because, Alicia, if we want to go back to Isipingo, when these attacks started, the first things we heard there was that the attacks were starting because people were heeding a call by King Goodwill Zwelithini to say that he wanted all foreigners to be deported. Of course, then the royal household clarifying that statement that that is not what the king had said.
All right, thank you so much to our reporter there, Ayanda Mhlongo, who's covering, of course, all the action in Durban in terms of the xenophobic attacks. Unfortunately, Bongani, we've run out of time, but very quickly, your parting words on xenophobia.
My parting word on xenophobia is that we must mobilize all South Africans, whether they are in government, they are in the private sector, they are traditional leaders, they are civil society leaders, they are religious leaders. We must mobilize and work together.
Thank you so much.
To deal with this issue. Thank
you so much, Bongani. Well, that is Uput Bongani Khumalo talking to us about xenophobia. And when we come back just now, we talk Eskom and the likely possibility that the whole country could be plunged into complete darkness or stage 4 load shedding. Find out how this will happen shortly after this break. Stay with us.
We live in a digital era, and the number of Africans with mobile phones is rapidly increasing.
Twitter use is predominantly being done on smartphones. This is a very African phenomenon.
Here, there are constantly new innovative ways to make the internet more affordable. With that, we're seeing protests against governments proposing methods to limit access. On Network, we give you information about all of this. We also have new computers, games and robots.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.
Welcome back. Let's take Tanelo from KwaMashu on the line. Tanelo, a very good morning to you, sir. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, Alicia.
A very good morning to you.
Yes. I think, Alicia, what caused this whole thing is that there was a leadership vacuum on this matter, right? Now, what happened is there were certain individuals who took matters in their own hands and then caused this whole thing. Because even when it started on Sunday, I was there and then I noticed that the whole group came from the hostel, because I'm calling from KwaMashu, and then it came from the hostel section and then came into the location. I can guarantee you the citizens of KwaMashu location were not part of this, because what happened is actually when those shops owned by Somalians were actually torn apart by those people, even the local ones, the local sponsor shops were destroyed. As that would show that those people were not even familiar with what was taking place there. And then secondly, what's happening in town and society is a problem of drug dealing. There is all sorts of allegations concerning that matter, that the Point police station and the whole management and the police are corrupt, they're protecting drugs. So that's one of the concerns of the and on the tax shop side, and when you find that there is collusion that is suspected between the wholesale dealers, mostly owned by Indians, and then with the Somalians that are supplying them stock at free or no cost, and then pay later. I think what I'm suggesting that we need to create a dialogue with the community, and then that will satisfy both the citizens and the foreigners. But also on that side, they must reveal their state that will actually assist in terms of the integration process. The audit of who's here legally, who's not here illegally must be done, so that we know who's here, because there are people that are unaccounted for and commit crimes, and then knowing that they won't be detected by the system because their fingerprints are not there. Lastly, a small business department need to come in here in terms of assisting the local communities to set up again and then start up afresh, and then it's a quick one.
Tanel, thank you so much for that. His line is very bad, but I really wanted to ask him, Akash, it takes us back to our story that there is now a probe into a possible third force that is behind this, because Tanel is from KwaMashu and he's saying that they have no idea who these people are. Reports were stating that these people just arrive at townships and locations in minibus taxis to come and attack. He's clearly stated that they're not part of this community. So there really needs to be that third probe that seriously looked into.
Like I say, I think it's very simplistic to lay blame solely at the floor or at the feet of the king, because we know, I mean, in KwaZulu-Natal, that's not the case. Also, you know, the people, the afternoon after the peace march in KwaZulu-Natal, you know, there were reports that people were bussed in. Where did they come from? Who paid for the buses? And you will find that if you speak to people, there's a lot of people on the ground who are completely opposed to xenophobia. You will find people who have issues with the foreigners, absolutely, you will find that. But there's also a distinction between when you have an issue with someone and then resorting to violence to resolve that issue. So even though a lot of people may have issues, they're not necessarily going to translate that into violence. So what is it? Why is it that there's this group of people? Is it opportunistic crime? Is it thugs who have taken advantage of the situation?
Or is there something known more? Criminals from the area, Akash. And so police should really be reinforcing in terms of doing investigations as to where actually these mobs come from.
Well, I've said right from the beginning, what we really need is the type of courts that we had in 2010, a speedy resolution to cases. Arrest people, let the general public see that there are repercussions for violence. Sentence people to terms of imprisonment or fines or whatever the case may be. Right now we've arrested people, but we're not seeing the criminal justice system moving fast enough.
All right, and that's where we're going to leave it, unfortunately. We're going to go on with Eskom now. South Africans could soon experience their first ever stage 4 load shedding after Eskom confirmed that the stage allocation would be altered. Minister Brown told media at Parliament on Wednesday that she had requested Eskom to improve communications with its stakeholders and that they form partnerships with various media companies to try and improve this process. Very quickly, Akash, let's touch and go on this one. Eskom's woes keep creeping up in the media almost weekly. weekly now. At least there's an acting CEO, but stage 4 load shedding. How will this impact the South African economy?
Look, I think we should all be worried because coupled with Eskom, we've got xenophobia, as we've been discussing. And that's not a good image for South Africa. People are not working. It's going to impact on economic growth, which we already know is probably plugged at about just under 2% for the current year. And we also know we need to grow this economy at about 6% to make sure that we find people jobs to resolve the issues that we're facing in terms of xenophobia. An energy crisis is going to mean businesses are not going to work. If businesses are not going to work, it's going to mean we're not going to be able to create jobs. But also, let's look at this from the other side. Let's not be shocked and surprised by this. We know that our country is not producing enough energy. It's a question of how do we manage the energy that we currently have. Stage 4 load shedding is merely reworking something which says we've got X amount of energy and this is how we divide it up to make sure that we don't have a total collapse of the grid. Let's not be foolish about this. Load shedding is designed to make sure our grid does not collapse. And I don't think there should be hysteria about this because I don't think our grid's going to collapse. I think it's a question of how we manage the electricity supply. What I would like us to start talking about, though, as a country, is how we use more effectively the energy that we currently have. You know, right now there's too much of unpredictability. You know, the Minister Lynn Brown says we need to bring stability, but we need more stability.
Absolutely. Well, load shedding, it seems, the criminals come out to play when it's totally dark outside. Well, Akash, unfortunately we've run out of time, but very quickly, what do you think will be top news this week between Eskom and xenophobia?
No, it's xenophobia. Xenophobia is a big story because it affects every South African. It affects the image of our country. There's a couple of pluses we can take going into this week. One, the violence seems to have abated to some extent.
All right.
Okay?
Let's leave it there,
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Akash, for coming to studio and being with us this morning. Our viewers, your contributions and suggestions are highly valued. Remember, to engage with us, you can follow us on Twitter at SA Media Monitor. Share your views and comments on Facebook. Go to www.facebook.com/Media Monitor and click like on our page. You can also email us your views about the show at mediamonitor@sabc.co.za. Thank you so much for watching Media Monitor. Do join us again next week. And in case you missed our live show, remember you can still catch the repeat tomorrow morning at 2 a.m. Alternatively, go to our SABC YouTube link on www.youtube.com/SABC News. For myself, Alicia Jali, and the rest of the Q-Tip team, and Akash, have yourself a blessed Sunday. Goodbye.